Pang Pilipinas.
If the Philippines is the fourth most cyber-attacked country in the world, what does this say about the integrity of our automated election system? A Kaspersky Security Network report says web threat attempts on government, including financial institutions and private sector organizations, media among them, have surged by more than 400%. And that's just since 2017, when the country ranked only 30th in the most attacked list. Last year alone, there were 50 million web threat attempts. Elections are 2 months away. Should we be worried? And what can we do? Good evening. This is a special episode of Politics as Usual, your weekly political appointment fix. I'm Iyo Ontiveros, and with me is my guest co-anchor for tonight, Paolo Abrera, who is an avid tech observer and is a co-anchor on New Day. Paolo, thank you so much for being here and for agreeing to doing the night shift.
Well, thank you, Pia. I'm really quite excited about being here tonight. I'm quite excited about tonight's discussion. Good evening to everybody. I think what's important here is that we realize that technology is now such an indispensable part of our daily lives, and we have to be aware of how big an influence it has on the upcoming election process, from influencing our decisions and opinions on candidates via legitimate information as well as disinformation to the actual automated election process and related cybersecurity issues and threats that can shape, sway, and even possibly manipulate the results if the average Filipino, that's you and me, are not vigilant about cyber threats.
Average talaga. I don't really understand
anything
tech,
but
yeah.
anything but average.
Yeah. Okay.
In your case.
Well, before we go to our guests on the show, let's speak first to our correspondent, Melissa Lopez, who covers the COMELEC beat, the Commission on Elections beat. Melissa, what is the latest on the COMELEC's preparations for the May 9, 2022 polls to ensure its integrity? Mel?
Pia, Paolo, Commissioner Marlon Casquejo says measures are in place to beef up security protocols of COMELEC's physical and digital systems. Casquejo, who is a computer engineer and lawyer, heads the steering committee for all preparations for the May 9 polls. He again denies that the COMELEC was hacked, contrary to a news report last January.
Our system, our preparation is a standalone system. There is no way that anyone can go into that system without getting inside the memory configuration room. We are very confident that our system was never been hacked and can never be hacked unless you go inside, you pass through the security of the Santa Rosa gate.
5 million registered voters were compromised. Casquejo said the hacking incident reported by Manila Bulletin did not happen after a thorough check of their physical and digital access logs. The data supposedly stolen did not exist either. Securing the ballots, voting machines, and other election materials is another concern. But COMELEC says its security teams, along with police, are on top of the situation. Here at the National Printing Office, prior coordination is needed before journalists and even representatives of political parties are allowed entry to view the ballot printing process.
This is part of our program for complete transparency, subject only to the limitation that we will not allow to compromise the security of the ballot and the configurations of the SD cards. Otherwise, we will allow your full access to the activities of the Commission on National Elections.
Anyone taking photos or videos at the NPO are also not allowed to zoom in on the actual ballot, so no one will gain access to the QR code, ballot numbers, and security features to prevent the illegal reproduction of the ballot. Over to you at the studio.
Well, who has access to these COMELEC servers, and will media be given a chance to visit them?
Right. Pia,
Security is even tighter in those servers which are located or scattered around Metro Manila and in Laguna. So far, COMELEC has only offered a virtual walkthroughs for later this month, and that's to keep the security protocols intact. Back to you, Pia and Paolo.
Melissa Lopez, they're joining us from the, if I'm not mistaken, the National Printing Office, no, in Quezon City. Well, Paolo, of course, this is a big concern for us because I remember 2016, I was here in the studio at night, no, and nagbibilang ng boto, biglang tumigil, and everybody, that's history already. But anyway, our first guest, yeah.
I was
Sorry,
just going
go
to say
ahead.
let's hope it doesn't repeat itself.
Yeah, and that's why there's so much concern, and that's why we're doing this special episode tonight. So our first guest for tonight is the spokesperson of the COMELEC, James Jimenez. James, thank you very much for being with us. Can you give us first an update on this alleged hacking of your servers? Of course, you say that this did not happen, right?
Yes, in fact, thank you very much for having me here. In fact, the fact that this hacking did not happen has been settled by very many experts. The CICT has said it. The DICT has said it. The NPC has said it. The NBI has said it. So that's the only update there is. This hacking did not happen. It was simply a bum steer. In fact, the group that was identified as having supposedly hacked the COMELEC themselves said that they were not hacking the COMELEC, that they were in fact hacking someone else. So just to be very clear about this, the COMELEC has not been hacked recently. It has not been hacked. Not like what happened in 2016 when we admitted freely that there was a hack that went on. But we moved on from that. We secured our systems, we strengthened our defenses, and now we're very confident in saying, as you saw Commissioner Marlon say, that we have not been hacked.
Well, that's interesting, James, that you said they were hacking someone else, another government organization.
That's what they're
or
saying. That's what they're saying. And
Oh my
in fact, that's what other experts are now looking at. The possibility that a third party is in fact being hacked. And that investigation is ongoing.
Okay, well, James, just how vulnerable at this point is our electoral process to cyber attacks and cyber crimes? I mean, 2016 was obviously a year of learning. You're open to admit that there were some lapses there and some learnings. But I'm sure in 2016 we felt that we perhaps had an airtight system and airtight security. How confident are we at this point?
Sure, Paulo. But before I go to that question, I'd like to clarify. Even in 2016, we said that the hack did not impact the integrity of the elections. And the reason for this is that our elections are not online. They are not susceptible to hacking. They are, in fact, around, I would say, 95% offline. They do not happen on the internet. And therefore, they are not that susceptible to hacking. And the same is true today. The same is true today because even now, what our system really does is we have automated counting, which means that all of the counting is done on site, but not on the internet. The only point of vulnerability that could be considered as existing right now is that moment when you transmit the election results from the precinct to the municipal canvassing station. However, even then, if the transmission is somehow stopped or corrupted, there are many redundancies that will allow us to recover the actual results, if that is what we want to do, or even to quarantine the results so that they no longer form part of the election results. This makes our system very secure.
So in other words, kahit merong mag-attempt na to hijack the transmission of data, let's say from a municipality to the provincial board of canvassers, you have all these safeguards in
Exactly. We can
Okay,
recover the
obviously.
data if it is hacked, and we can make sure that any other data that is affected is effectively quarantined so it doesn't impact the final result.
James, a question naman ngayon about all these text messages. Ang daming natatanggap, practically everybody, ang daming natatanggap ng mga text messages supporting, endorsing a
Yes.
presidential candidate. Sometimes there is misinformation that is spread on another candidate. Now, why is this happening? And How should voters take these messages? And what do we do? Ignore and delete? What?
Ignore and delete is the best solution because this is spam text. Ito ay text blaster ang ginagamit ng mga political operatives na yan. And text blasters have been around for the longest time. In fact, ang NTC, merong mga regulations patungkol sa text blasting. The proper enforcement body here is, I would suppose, the NTC, not the COMELEC. Unfortunately, ginagamit ito for political purposes now. But think back a little bit and you will realize that this same tactic is being used for other purposes. It's being used for spreading disinformation during calamities. It is being used to spread disinformation about financial scams, etc. So this is a wide-ranging problem. It's been a problem for quite some time, and it really boils down to spamming, right? You have someone with a text blaster and they're spamming people left and right.
Well, here's the question though, James. I mean, you already mentioned the NTC. Whose job is it to, how would you say, locate these spam blasters, these text blasters? But is it your job to put some sort of sanctions, towards those who are benefiting from it?
I would say not. The COMELEC manages elections. It doesn't manage the NTC. It doesn't manage the airwaves, essentially, right? And again, enforcement, we believe, falls on another agency, not the COMELEC. It is unfortunate that it is being used for political purposes, but this does not make it a COMELEC enforcement matter. In any case, COMELEC is not designed to enforce things like this. No, we don't have the capabilities to handle things like text blasters. In fact, sometimes we get victimized by these text blasters as well when people start spreading misinformation about the COMELEC in its operations. I don't know if you remember, but during the filing of COCs, we had this huge text blast that was basically confined to the filing area. So yeah, even us, we do get blindsided by that sometimes.
All right. Well, I mean, you already talked about the rampant misinformation and disinformation on social media. How are you countering this, and how are we as end users and receivers of digesting this misinformation? How should we be countering it?
Right. Well, the most effective way forward that we found really is to cooperate with social media channels, because social media really is the biggest artery of misinformation. We talk to them, we cooperate with them. We're on a whitelist with several social media companies, and this allows us to take down fake news rather quickly. Much quicker, I would say, than an average person could manage. But beyond that, it's really a matter of educating the public and educating them about their media consumption habits. It's very important that the fight against fake news begins with the individual rejecting fake news, with the individual refusing to let fake news thrive within their social spaces.
And by answering that question of Paolo, James also did answer the question I was going to ask about how people can distinguish fact from fake news, fact from false information. So, James Jimenez, thanks so much for being with us. But you are going to be joining us in the last segment of the show. Salamat, James Jimenez.
Right,
we'll be back after a quick break. Stay tuned.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual, a special episode tonight on cybersecurity attacks. And with me is my guest co-anchor, Paolo Abrera. Our second guest, technology editor at Manila Bulletin and cybersecurity analyst Art Samaniego. Before anything else, Art, may tatanungin lang ako. Kamusta na yung kalating milyon sa Las Piñas?
No, the PNP clarified that statement. They said hundreds of thousands, not
Okay.
500,000.
Okay. Oh, kasi yung kalating milyon, ang daming nagsabi, mga netizens, paano naging kalating milyon yan? 350,000 plus lang yung registered
Buong
voters,
population.
as yung population, 500,000. But anyway, of course, hindi yan pag-usap.
is
Yeah.
590,000.
590. So medyo nadagdagan lang ng 10,000. Anyway, Art, sorry, pasensya ka na. Okay, pinag-usapan naman natin ngayong gabi yung cybersecurity. No? So, syempre ang tanong is, why is the Philippines, tama ba yung word, a laggard, lagging behind when it comes to cybersecurity? And it's funny, no? We're supposed to be the social media capital of the world. Everybody's on a gadget, your phone, your smartphone, your iPad, your Mac, your laptop. Pero, bakit tayo ganito? What's going on?
No, I don't agree to that statement because the Philippines is not lagging when it comes to cybersecurity. We have talents here in the Philippines na mga cybersecurity experts talaga na ginagawa pa consultant ng mga taga-ibang bansa. So we're not lagging in terms of cybersecurity.
So we're not lagging, but if they say we are the fourth most cyber attack country in the world, and just 4 or 5 years back we were number 17 in the ranking. So, paano yun? How are we supposed to understand that?
That's just a study from Kaspersky. Kaspersky is an antivirus company, a security company that came out with that study. Pero other study says, no, wala tayo sa top 10.
Okay, wala tayo sa top
So
10.
it's just
Nasaan
a study
tayo?
of one company.
Oh, kung-
Pero yun nga, Kaspersky kasi is also a really reliable security software na ginagamit din ng mga Pilipino. So ang na-test lang nila yung mga users ng Kaspersky.
Okay. Ano yung how tough are our laws against cyber criminals?
Okay naman yung law natin. We have the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012, which is being enforced now. And also I have worked with the NBI and the DICT when it comes to cybersecurity. We have a really capable law enforcement agencies that could track these hackers or these cyber criminals.
Okay, so it doesn't apply when, di ba, ang sinasabi palagi, ang Pilipinas ang daming batas, ang gaganda ng mga batas, ang problema natin implementation. Hindi naman.
Hindi naman. Kasi look like what the NBI Cybercrime Division is doing now. They arrest a lot of cyber criminals now. Yung iba hindi nga nababalita because these are high level arrests.
Okay.
Okay, well, Art, let's take a step back and just for our appreciation, let's frame it this way. One of the most common forms of cybercrime is, we'll call it under the general umbrella of hacking. What do you think are the motivations for hacking? Is it bragging rights among these hackers? Is it a lucrative business? Bakit nga ba nangyayari ang hacking?
Ano yun? Depende kasi sa motive nung attacker. So we have different kinds of hackers, and yung motive nila, yung iba talagang gusto lang magyabang, yung iba they're really committing cybercrime. Magkaiba kasi yung cybercrime and cyber attack.
Let's talk about that.
So magkaiba yun. So merong difference yung dalawa. Yung mga cyber criminals, ang motive nila para kumita lang talaga. Meron namang iba, they want to be heard. Ito yung mga hacktivists. So, activism through hacking. So, yun yung mga motive nila. So, depende sa motive ng hacker kung ano yung kakalabasan nung attack o yung attempt na gagawin nila.
Okay, well, whatever their motivations are, money or fame or bragging rights, the victims remain the same. It's always us. People and organizations need to protect themselves from these hackers. How can we best do that?
Ang naging problema ngayon, because of the pandemic, everyone has gone online. pati yung mga hindi ready, yung mga tito at tita natin, so nag-online na sila. Ito yung sinasamantala ng mga cyber criminals. Alam nila na hindi ito marunong mag-computer, hindi ito marunong sa basic security when it comes to the internet. So they attack these poor internet users. Ito yung mga nabibiktima. This is the reason why more than 400% ang pagtaas ng cybercrime all over the world, hindi lang sa Pilipinas.
So business is good, I suppose. I mean, cyber hacking in general that does pay off, and that's why hackers continue to be in the business of hacking.
Art is
Naabutan na ng hacking, naabutan na ng cybercrime ang kinikita ng drugs.
Wow. Okay.
Mas malaki na ang kinikita ng cybercrime ngayon kaysa dun sa drugs globally.
Interesting yung sinabi mo kanina lang, Art, no? And this is something people always say because of the pandemic, almost everyone, is online, no? And it's really interesting for me because technology is exactly what, before pre-pandemic, technology is what we felt kept us apart.
Yes.
And then with the pandemic, now it is exactly the thing that keeps us together,
connected.
which is abused also.
Yeah.
Diba?
And it became a very, how would you call it? It became a very open door. We took our work with us at home, and I think all of the connection protocols, once there is that electronic handshake between your workplace and the way you work at home, given your workstation, suddenly all the doors are open to sensitive information here in your workplace, and possibly this could have possibly been what has happened in some of these other organizations.
If it's okay, Paolo, I wanted to ask Art, kasi di ba sabi mo, Art, di ba, yung mga tito at tita na biglang napasabak sa internet, parang gulo parang laban. And you were saying, it's important that we protect ourselves, no? Because we have smartphones, but we're not very smart, no? So, how do we...
Balikan natin yon. How do we do it, Art? Paano nga ba?
So,
Kailangan bang mag-aral din kami ng gadget? Ganun ba?
yun lang, very, very basic. What you do in real life, dapat yun din gawin mo sa digital life. So you don't just give your home address to anybody. You don't give your password to anybody who will say na, oy, taga-bangko ako, kailangan ko ng password mo. Hindi mo na yung ginagawa sa real life. Dapat, hindi mo din yung ginagawa sa digital life mo. So you need to be very careful in oversharing. Ito yung naging problema natin ngayon, oversharing ng information. So masyado kang maraming information na sinishare, mas madaling manakaw yung identity mo.
May oversharing sa social media.
People are clicking links everywhere. Pag may pinadala sa kanila, nagkiklik agad.
Ganda ng advice.
Especially so-called Facebook supported scams. Ito yung mga ads sa Facebook na nagsasabi na you click this, you will win something.
Yeah.
Right. The weakest link I think is always the human factor.
Naloloko sila. So ito yung ang tawag dito, ito yung mga phishing attacks, phishing attempts. And it's also called social engineering, nabola ka. Kung sa tunay na buhay, tawag doon, nabudol ka.
Digital budol. Pao.
Digital budol.
Yeah.
Art, the subject of white hackers or white hats, often comes up as somebody or people, specialists who will show us the vulnerabilities of these systems, put them to the test, so to speak. Help us appreciate who they are and what role they play in cybersecurity.
Yeah. Kasi calling someone just a hacker is really ambiguous. So, marami kasing types of hacker. So, may mga traditional hackers tayo na tinatawag. Ito yung black hat. These are the bad guys who would like to steal your identity, who would like to steal information from you, tapos nanakawin yung pera mo. Ang tawag dyan, mga black hats. The second one is the white hat hackers. Ito yung complete opposite ng black hat hackers. So, they will never harm your system. They will help you secure your system. They will ask permission from you before they will attempt to check your system. So ito yung mga tumutulong sa atin. And usually, companies pay for their services. So ito yung white hat hackers. Pero meron din tinatawag na gray hat hackers. Ito yung mga hacktivists. So they're in between the black and the white hat. So these are really the dangerous ones because sometimes they will just attack your system and then expose your system's vulnerability for the benefit of the common good.
It sounds like a little bit of a
So
get out
those
of
are the
jail
three
card.
kinds, three types of hackers. Yun yung traditional hackers.
Okay, well, are they? How do we differentiate then? I mean, aside from the fact that you may receive, how would you call it, notice from a white hat hacker, humihingi ng permiso. I'm going to test your system.
Yeah. Siguro naman they don't have calling cards.
Well, because I was going to say it sounds
White hacker, black
black hacker, and gray hacker, because a gray
Yeah,
hat sounds like a
Meron.
get out
Meron
of jail
services.
card.
Merong ano? Sorry, Art?
Meron ganyan services.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mga
Yung mga white.
companies
Oo.
would like to help you to secure your system.
Yeah.
So yan yung mga ginagawa ngayon.
Oh, yun yung mga legit.
Pero yun nga,
Yung mga legit.
Yun yung mga legit. Pero
Oh.
yun nga, at first mukha silang white hat hackers, pero once na they want to get something from you, in return na, we will expose you if you will not pay us. We will expose your system to the public.
So it's a ransom
Hindi na
attack.
sila white hat. They're black hats.
Once they've gotten
Pero
in
mga
there.
label lang kasi ito, kasi meron din yung tinatawag na red hat hackers, blue
Red
hat
hat?
hackers. The red hat hackers are the one paid by the government to do penetration testings.
Okay. Ano yung blue?
Blue are the good guys.
Okay.
Tasked to protect your system.
Blue
And then there's a
Ateneo.
green hackers. Ito yung mga bago. Ito yung mga bagong mga newbie. Pero yun nga, ang traditional way to identify or to differentiate hackers, yun yung black, the white, and the gray hats.
Okay. I think we are through with Art Samaniego. But Art, you're going to be joining us in the last segment of the show, okay? Thank you very much for being with us tonight. We'll see you later. Up next, we'll talk about ways to counter cyber attacks. This is Politics as Usual. Be right back.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back to Politics as Usual. I'm Pio Ontiveros together with Paolo Abrera, my special guest co-anchor for this special episode. Dahil ang pinag-uusapan natin ngayon, cybersecurity, cyber attacks in light of our elections in May, in 2 months' time. And syempre, ang dami kasi mga cyber attacks that have been happening. Paolo. So our next guest is James Allworth. He's head of innovation of Cloudflare, an internet healthcare, right? An internet infrastructure and cybersecurity company. He's joining us from Singapore. Hi, James. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. Let's begin with this. What is and then tell us, what is correct, how to correctly pronounce it. Is it DDoS or DDoS attack? What is
DDoS.
it? DDoS. Okay,
Yeah,
what is it?
DDoS.
Then you can describe it this
Well-
way, You could be as technical and as techy as possible, and then give us the layman's definition.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you both for having me. A DDoS attack, well, it stands for a distributed denial of service attack. At its most basic level, this is a malicious attack designed to take a server offline. So how does it do it? Think of the internet like a network with a series of computers, and your phone, you want to access something on the internet, perhaps from your computer. You go and try and do that. The way a DDoS attack works is it floods the server that you're trying to reach that has the information that you want, preventing you from gaining access to it. So we talked about it being like a traffic network or a phone network. So imagine you're trying to call someone up, but someone wants to stop you and they have 100 people all around the world calling the number at the same time. It effectively prevents you from gaining access to that server, and it can do it at the level of the server. The server gets overwhelmed, or it can congest the networks, the bandwidth pipes that are trying to get to the server. There are a range of different ways of doing it. And the way hackers do this is they compromise a number of machines into what's called a botnet, and effectively turn computers or phones or other devices into zombie devices. They appear to be working, but they're waiting for a call from the hacker to basically say, okay, send a flood, send a phone call, send a request to this server because we want to try and knock it offline. And so when that device receives the command, it floods the destination and it knocks the server offline.
Back in the day, back in the day in the 1970s, we had those, what is it, the rotary phones, right? And when you call someone, and then sometimes there's a cross line, diba? Remember?
Party
That-
line,
a
cross
party
line,
line.
yeah.
Parang, is it like that? No,
Well, in
not
effect,
exactly.
I think what James is describing is basically a traffic jam of information. I mean, you're trying to get information from a particular site, but the hackers have flooded it with so many requests for information.
But so,
that
and it's not a
unable to keep up.
it's not a real traffic jam. It's
Well, it's a traffic jam.
manipulated.
It's a traffic jam of information. I mean,
Information, yeah.
the requests for information is there, but it's coming from so many sources, from so many computers. I wanted to ask James. So when you describe these zombie computers, zombie devices, are we talking about devices that may be or are in fact making these requests without the owner knowing? I mean, these aren't devices set up by the hacker. It's not like a big farm of computers under the control of the hacker. We're talking about devices, maybe perhaps like the one that's in my hand or sitting on your desk, your desktop, that's sort of taken hostage. Is that what we're talking about here, James?
That's exactly it. Computers are often a common device that are compromised, but it's also things that you might not expect that are now connected to the internet. We're connecting everything to the internet. We're connecting cameras to monitor our houses. We're connecting doorbells. Like, we're getting smart devices. These devices are often not as commonly patched. People aren't as cautious about keeping them up to date as they would be with a computer or a phone. And so once a vulnerability is discovered, if someone's not actively managing them in the background, which like a lot of folks, you buy one of these devices, you don't think you need to apply software updates to it. They're not actively managing it. A vulnerability is discovered. Hackers are consistently scanning for vulnerabilities like this. They take over the device, or they turn it into this zombie like I described, and it just sits there. It appears to be working as normal, and then one day they want to attack something. They send the command, and your smart doorbell is attacking a server somewhere else in the world.
So your average tito or tita of Manila should not ignore the update your software notifications.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
I'll remember that. Yeah.
Well, I think I just wanted to frame it. We're talking about the big picture of how cybercrime and hacking affect or are going to affect us and play a role in the upcoming elections. But I think it also pays to frame it in that there are roles that each of our individual lapses in security will play. If we don't safeguard the security of our personal devices, they then become part of this zombie bot network, which can be weaponized and used against whatever organization you're targeting. James, what would be the best course of action to sort of avoid being part of this zombie army?
Right. So, Paolo, you touched on one of these already just before. Keeping your software up to date is absolutely essential. Vulnerabilities are discovered on devices on a regular basis, phones, computers, smart devices. Manufacturers are normally pretty good at responding. It's really important that you keep your devices up to date. There are a range of other things that are important beyond just DDoS attacks, though, which if you don't keep things up to date, like a device can become one of those zombies. But there are just other general good habits that you should have around cybersecurity. Art touched on a few of them before. Not sharing passwords is a really important one. I would say not reusing passwords across accounts is really important. So what can happen is a site can get compromised, and once a hacker downloads all the usernames and passwords, one of the first things they will do is endeavor to use those same usernames and passwords on other sites to see whether people are using the same passwords, because most people can remember one, maybe two, maybe three. And so you get into one account and then a hacker's into two accounts and three accounts and four accounts. Multi-factor authentication, or what's otherwise known as two-factor authentication, is something that's really valuable to do. This is where you get a second layer of identification beyond just your password. So this is when your bank might text you to send you a text with a confirmation code that you have to enter in. For important accounts like emails, banks, social media, I think that's a really good idea. Using a password manager is even more advanced, where what it will do is it will generate a random password for you for each one of the different accounts that you have, so you don't have to remember all the different passwords. Phishing is a really important thing to be aware of now. So making sure that you're cautious before clicking on links on email, or, like Art mentioned, clicking on links on social media. That's one way that people can get compromised. And then the last thing that's best practice here is to really make sure you have an offline backup of important information. If there's stuff that's super important and there's a potential for it to be compromised, keeping it backed up is a really good practice.
James, what other forms of what are the other forms of cyber attacks? And well, earlier Art was saying that more people are, almost everyone in the world is online because of the pandemic. So that's why there are so many cyber attacks now, because almost everyone's online.
I mean, that is definitely part of it. If you think about how business was conducted 20 years ago, a lot of it was walking into a bank and or walking into a store. There wasn't this vector, but now everybody is online, and so there's just so much more opportunity for cyber attacks to be taking place. There are again that many more people. That many people who aren't paying attention to cybersecurity, so it can also be a very lucrative way for hackers to spend their time, whether it's compromising individuals or compromising businesses.
Let's talk a little bit big picture here. What about state-sponsored cyber attacks? This is a term that you hear quite often, and perhaps in the sphere of putting it against the larger picture of our elections, how big a deal is a larger organization, something as big as an entire country, working against you?
Man, that's as serious as it can get. I mean, in the same way that we just talked about how business used to be conducted offline, but now it's online. The military work used to be conducted purely on the battlefield, and now it can be conducted digitally as well. Many nations have folks working for them in this capacity, and if you're a hostile nation and you want to target a nation or target another organization or even an individual, they have people in their employ that can focus and do this kind of thing. And it's just another reason why it's important for everyone, from governments through to businesses through to individuals, to be so focused on paying attention to cybersecurity, because that is another vector through which hostile actors can interfere with the runnings of a government or a business or even your life.
Okay, well, how are we able to actually identify? I mean, once you have things like DNS fronting, you have IP masks. You can't quite tell who the threat actors are. How do we then identify that an attack is, for example, a state-sponsored attack, or if it's just a small-time teenager in his basement, trying to ramp up his hacking credibility?
I mean, it's an excellent question. One of the things that differentiates the online world from the physical world is it's that much easier for folks to cover their tracks. And so we were talking earlier about DDoS attacks. Most countries have laws on the books preventing DDoS attacks, making them illegal. But when it comes to a a device that's been compromised in another country and appears to be a legitimate traffic. It's owned by an actual human and they use it for legitimate purposes. Like, it can be very hard to stop that. It can be very hard to figure out who originated the attack, because someone's controlling that zombie device, but it's not always possible to tell who. Now, in the instance of large-scale cyber attacks against organizations or large governments, the folks who are who are on the receiving end of that often have teams that are the specialists who are able to do the work to figure out who is responsible for it. But that, like you said, like, there are a number of ways that these hackers or these state-sponsored actors will use to cover their tracks, and it can make it extremely challenging sometimes to figure out who did it, which in turn makes it more attractive for state-sponsored actors to continue these attacks.
Right. Digital forensics is another very interesting field, and I'd love to discuss that a little further with James. James, we've really just scratched the surface here. Cloudflare Head of Innovation, James Allworth, will still be with us in the last segment of our show.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
We are on our final stretch. This is Politics as Usual, a special episode on cybersecurity, cyber attacks, given that we have elections, an automated election system in 2 months, on May 9, 2022. Conflict spokesman James Jimenez, technology editor of Manila Bulletin, and cybersecurity analyst Art Maniego, and James Allworth of Cloudflare, still back with us together. We have more questions for you, James Allworth. Well, this is something that's been coming up, but I think it's important to remind people why should we be concerned about our personal accounts, our data getting hacked?
Well, this is the equivalent of our house keys and our personal records. It gives making sure that this is secure is incredibly important, given how much people spend online. So making sure accounts are secure. If your account's not secure, you're effectively able to, or someone's able to impersonate you online wherever they have access to your account. So be that with your bank, with your email provider, on social media, it's incredibly important to make sure that accounts are secure for that reason. Now, data is actually getting too much the same way. When you call up a bank, they will often ask you a series of questions to authenticate yourself, to make sure that you are really who you say you are. If they get access to sufficient information about you, your birthday, other personally identifying information about you, like your addresses, it's such that they're able to impersonate you in all kinds of ways that you really don't want them to.
Well, I think you're touching on a subject which we wanted to talk about. How is the data retrieved or stolen in the first place? Art, touched on this, the idea or the subject of phishing. And you said two-factor authentication is, a move in the right direction, though. But then it does ask you for extra data about you. It does ask you about what is your middle name, what was the name of your first pet, and these are questions that often find their way onto your passwords. Do you get what I'm pointing at here? The more data you give, or the more information you give via things like two-factor authentication, the more of your details are actually floating around on the web. Am I moving in the right direction with that thought?
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're driving at, Paolo. I think it's a case of organizations that you're able to trust. So if my bank asks me for my mother's maiden name, I'm much more comfortable giving it to them. If it's a random website that I'm signing up for because I want to get on a forum, then I will be much more judicious in the information that I share. The other thing that I would say is that there are other ways of doing two-factor authentication that are worth exploring. There are authenticator apps that you can download, like that very similar in nature to the little keychains that banks will sometimes give that give you a randomly generated number that always changes. So you're able to do things like two-factor authentication without necessarily providing Google or Facebook or sometimes a bank more data. It's actually one of the most secure ways that you can do two-factor authentication. And then the last thing you said about sometimes personal information making it into passwords, I would really encourage people not to do that. And again, if you search online for a password manager, that's a really good first step in protecting your online identity.
Okay, Pia was proudly
thank you, Paolo.
reporting to me that she
Yeah, my
actually
password
uses
manager.
a password
Yeah.
manager. And I think it is an excellent solution because you want your password to be as difficult as possible to crack, but at the same time, the more difficult it is to crack, more difficult it is
Yeah.
to remember. And that's probably why we choose simpler passwords.
You know, Art Samaniego had this big smile on his face when Paolo was asking a question earlier. So, Art, I think you want to answer that question also. And at the same time, talk to us also about how this is all going to be used to influence the outcome of the elections. Earlier, we were speaking to James Jimenez, and he was saying, and so were the other commissioners, no, na, lock, stock, and barrel. That's paraphrasing. Wala tayong problema. We're not going to have a problem with the elections, no? Art?
Natawa ako dun sa password kasi. Dun sa password.
Yeah.
So, a password should be easy to remember but hard to guess.
Okay.
So yun yung dapat. Also, treat your password as your underwear. You don't share it to anybody, you don't let anybody see it.
Yeah.
And you don't reuse your underwear. It's like your password. Do not reuse your password. Every account should have a different password.
Words to
Si Art-
live
Kasi
by.
Yeah,
pag
si Art talaga.
nanakaw
Yeah.
yung isang account mo, wipe
Oo.
out lahat yung iba mong
Si
accounts.
Art talaga, yung mga soundbites niya, para makahulog ka lang,
I
mahulog ka lang sa
know.
upuan.
But
eh.
it makes
Don't
perfect
share
sense.
your
Don't share your underwear and don't share your passwords.
Okay.
It makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. It makes
Yeah.
perfect sense to me.
Okay, pero...
Don't reuse your underwear, don't reuse your
Okay.
password.
Art, teka, pag-usapan natin, let's talk about the elections. And from passwords and underwear to the elections. But anyway, sorry about that. Art, the outcome of the elections, of course there's a lot of concern, di ba? Given everything that's happening, and then we have elections in 2 months' time, no? How is this all going to impact on May 9?
I have a request from the Senate not to talk about this
Yeah.
incident because of the sensitivity of the
Yeah.
information that we got.
What
So,
this?
in
What
respect
is
to the
this?
Senate, I'll talk
Yeah.
after the hearing of the Senate pag may permission na ako.
Okay. But earlier James was saying that there was no hacking that happened, and if I remember correctly, hindi ba, no, Paolo, kanina, sabi nga ni James. Diba, James, you were saying that as a matter of fact, the hackers were actually going after another, a third party,
Yes.
right?
No, I would just like to make it clear that all the information that we got from the tipster appear to be files from the COMELEC.
Okay. Yeah. De, ganito na lang, Art.
So,
Maybe.
that's why we're saying that it's from the COMELEC and we asked COMELEC to verify it.
Okay. Well, maybe I can ask it this way, Art.
Sinasabi
Yeah.
ng COMELEC ngayon na hindi kami nahack. Pero hindi nila sinasabi kung sino yung nahack. Even
Yeah.
the DICT and the CICT says it's the third party provider of the COMELEC which has no presence in the Philippines without the COMELEC.
Okay. Well, Art, maybe I can ask this question of
Anyway,
you. Yeah.
I have a
Yes, you've
request
been
of the
asked.
Senate not to
Yes,
talk about
yes.
it.
But
Thank
can
you.
I ask this question and then tell me if you can answer this? No. How confident are you in our elections?
Ginagawa ng ito ha, nakikita ko ha, ginagawa ng COMELEC ang lahat to secure the election.
Okay. It's good enough.
Well,
So,
I
yeah.
think maybe we can ask James to react to that, because if there's one thing I think that will cast any kind of a shadow of a doubt on you as a voter, on us as a voter, whether or not the very tenet of the democratic election process is that your vote is sacred and your vote is actually going to be counted. But whenever there is past experience of information leaking, of a hacker being able to get into your system, it casts a shadow of a doubt and leaves a very bad taste in the mouth of the voter. I, as a voter, wonder if my vote is actually going to be counted. How do we reassure people that in this round of elections, James, we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're airtight?
Well, that's a tough job. That's a tough job, Paolo. See, the thing is this, no? When people talk about hacking, they're not talking about the election system that we use. Again, because our elections are offline, they're not really hackable in that sense. We don't use an electronic voting system. We don't use a system that really depends on online systems for it to work. We have a system that is entirely offline. There is a part of it that leverages the use of networks and transmissions, but even that is severable. It's something that you can take away, right? And it would not affect the outcome of the elections. Yun nga ang problema natin dito. Ang problema natin is that I guess the automated election system is still very new to a lot of people. The concepts involved are still very new, and that there's still a lot of fear about the unknown, about something that is not fully understood yet. But bottom line, as far as the hackings thus far are concerned, the COMELEC stands by its word that there really is no threat to the electoral system. Again, this is not to trivialize cybersecurity matters. Cybersecurity is a major problem. But the way the electoral system is designed right now, speaking specifically of this point in time, we feel that there is very little threat to the integrity of that system arising from these hackings. Of course, the hackers are going to say different, but again, bottom line, we are offline.
All right, just really quick. It came to my mind. We're focusing on the elections, and there hasn't been a lot of talk about how we might pivot should we see a rise in cases of COVID. Should there be a new variant that will keep us home? Are we in any way ready to pivot to another system where we don't have to show up and actually fill in our ballots and hand in our ballots? And how will that then affect the security?
Will we be able to email our votes?
Will we be going to an online voting system? Do we have a backup system, and how secure would that system be?
We're not ready. We're not ready to pivot to that to any alternative system right now. Voting by mail is not available to us. Obviously, you need a strong postal system as a backbone for any online voting, for any postal voting system. Online voting, again, is still years away from realization in the Philippines. We are probably closing in on it for overseas voting, but not for local. So in-person voting is really what we have right now.
All
I
right.
see.
Yeah, we ran out of time. And I think this means that we should have a part 2 of this. Or maybe you should have a tech show, Paolo.
There's an idea.
Yeah.
I'd love to have everybody back, particularly James Allworth. Great information. Thank you so much, James, for being with us.
Thank you, James Allworth, James Jimenez, and Art Samaniego. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk digital warfare. But we can talk about it here at this table on the show. Your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pia Ontiveros.
And I'm Paolo Obrera. I hope tonight has been as interesting for you as it was for me.
It was for me. Thank you, Paolo.
Pleasure.
See you back here next Tuesday, 8:30 p.m.